Okay, today we're going to look at doing a Hebrew verb search specifically. So we're going to open up the Lexham Hebrew Bible, and we have a good text before us, Exodus 23:7. Today we're going to do a search on a Hebrew verb and experiment with using proximity language. In other words, using a more complex search. And so actually, before we begin, I just want to remind you about the wiki.logos.com. This is really helpful, especially if you go to the Search Help tab, and then you can go to the Detailed Search Help on the right. And when you are there, there are a lot of helpful articles and introductions, phraseologies to using the search indicators. And what I kind of want to introduce is using proximity operators. Those are these words, these syntax. It's helpful to be able to run searches this way. And so I'll kind of show you some examples for that. So here we are in Exodus 23:7. We're reading here in Hebrew, and it's from the lying word, stand far off. And the innocent and the righteous do not kill. And then you have an explanatory statement here for I will not atzdik. I will not atzdik. This comes from tzadak, to be righteous. But obviously this can't mean I will not be righteous wicked. That can't mean that. And if you do your parsing, if you've taken Hebrew and you go through the color system as I teach you, or you just look through the paradigms, you see that this is red, purple, green, which means that it's a hifil. So the hifil has a causative nature, so I will not cause as righteous, or the nuance here is probably I will not declare as righteous the wicked. And so let's say we want to do some more studying on this word here, because it doesn't happen too often as a hifil. So we want to do some comparison contrast. Now, obviously, you could double click, open it up in a lexicon, and examine it that way. And you could see, I'll just make it a little less big here. You could see that it's used 22 times in the call, and you could see that it's to be in the right, to be just, right, etc. It's got that nuance. But in the hifil, it has to treat as innocent, or to declare one righteous in a certain sense is the meaning of the PL. So we have the call, PL, and hifil, and then the hitpael showing up in this root. And then you also have one in Daniel, which is for the nifal, which is the unique usage of the nifal. So this is an interesting verb because it doesn't show up all over the place. So after the lexicon gives us some good information, that would be great. But let's say you don't have halot, or you just want to double check and do your own research, which is really good. Then we just right click on the word. And remember, over here on the left, if you want to look up the entirety of the word, you can click the check mark, the root word symbol there. And I just thought of this. This should have been obvious, but I never put two and two together. Is that checkbox or check mark there is indicating the root, just like in mathematics you have a symbol similar to that. And then the circle looking thing is the gloss. So if we click this and run the search over here on the right and run that search, notice it's giving us 449 results because it's giving us adjectives, nouns, and verbs. So here in Genesis 4:18 you have Malki Tzedek, that's the name Melchizedek, because Tzedek is a part of the name. You have Tzedakah, which is the noun for righteousness. Famous verse there, Genesis 15:6, and it was accounted to him as righteousness. So that's pretty common. We have, and notice here, Exodus 23:7 shows up because it carries the verbs as well. So that's helpful in the sense that can give us all of those examples. I'm going to close that for now. But what we want for our purposes is to run the gloss search. And what we can do is click here and it'll run the search for the gloss. And notice we have 41 for the lemma, I should say, 41 results in 40 verses. So that's looking for all the verbal uses of tzadak. Now I should go back here and introduce something else to you. If you right click, this on the bottom right of the search symbol is notice these little symbols here at the end. That's telling you to search for this exact form of the word. So if you click that and search for this exact form, notice that this form only shows up twice, here in Exodus 23:7 and in Job 27:5. So that's helpful, especially with some words that are used more often, because you can narrow it down. Let's say you have a verb that's used 500 times. Well, if you look for this specific parsing of the verb, maybe you can narrow it down to 50 times. So you can search that way as well. So that's helpful. But what I want to introduce to us here is the concept of narrowing down the search. So if you are in this box of search, it says lemma tzadak. So that's the root being given there, and you have 41 results in 40 verses. So in some verse it shows up twice. So if we scroll through that, we would find that. But what I want to show you is how to narrowly define these a little more. So with Hebrew especially, you might have to push the end symbol or the end button on your keyboard to make sure that it's all the way to the right. Otherwise, sometimes the @ symbol, notice how it shows up right here. You don't want it right there. You want it at the end. So I have to push the end button on my keyboard, and then now the @ symbol shows up here at the end so that it doesn't mess up the Hebrew. That's kind of a problem with the Hebrew, is it writes right to left instead of left to right. So now notice this shows up on the end. Sometimes it'll show up over here. And this is giving you a list of options for what to search for. So obviously we're searching for a verb in this case. So I'm clicking the verb, and then notice you have all these different options for what you want to search for. You could search for call passive, nifal, hifil, hofal, pl, poel, polel, and some of these, by the way, are not common stems at all. This is an exhaustive list of all the different possibilities, but like we talked about in Hebrew class, there are the main stems and then the really, really rare stems, which are really derivations of the normal root stems, the base stems. And so let's say we want to search for all of the call usages. And so I click call, and then I can go ahead and push enter. And I'm running the search. So now I have 22 results in 22 verses. And so all of these will be call usages of the verbs, of the verb tzadak. Now I can go back and click up here and readjust this. I can unselect call, and I can do PL, for example. And I can even make it a little more specific. I can do PL, and I can look for all of the masculine verbs. So PL masculine verbs, and notice that it skips over here with question marks because it's saying, okay, we'll take anything of that as long as it's masculine. And I can run a search, and notice it tells me that there's nothing that meets that criteria. So when I go back then, I say, okay, there's no PL masculine verbs. How else do I want to look for this? I could look for nifal, and I could look for nifal masculine. So let's run that search. Okay, there's only one nifal masculine. It's like what we saw in the lexicon, Daniel 8. So that could be helpful. Now, as I'm going through this, I could even select I want all the call, nifal, and hifil verbs. Those are the ones that I want. Notice how it symbolizes it up here. And I only want the ones in first person as well. So go through that. There's only 8 results. So this is including all the results for this verb tzadak that is in the hifil, call, or nifal, and only in the first person. So these are all the first person. Here you have an imperfect. Here you have some perfect. So here's another imperfect, and then perfect. So all of these searches are differentiating and helping you understand these sequences and helping you run the searches to see how this verb functions, and you can do it in a variety of ways. Now, I said I wanted to look at how to use proximity operators. So we're going to run the search just as normal. And so now I'm going to go to the end again, and I'm going to give a search syntax of within, let's say within 2 words, and then we're going to look for lemma. Let's see. Let's go ahead and see. And here you can use your English keyboard, but it's really hard. So I encourage you to have a Hebrew keyboard installed, which I have another YouTube video on how to install the Greek and Hebrew keyboard if you need help on that. But let's go ahead and search within the word for wicked. So I type in wicked and then just want to make sure that it's the right one. So I'm going to select this one. This is the verbal form, and I want it the noun form. So this is the noun form. So we're looking at so what this should give us, and it should give us at least one result because of Exodus 23:7. It's going to give us every occurrence of the verb tzadak, which occurs within 2 words of rasha. So if I run that search, okay, we have a couple. We have a couple searches. So this is revealing, and I'd not run this search before, so this is actually kind of interesting to me, how periodically throughout the Old Testament then you have this phrase, a verbal root of tzadak, and each time it is in the hifil. So notice how the Christian Standard Bible translates it, I will not justify the guilty, and here this is a participle, so it is the one who they are pronouncing, or they are justifying the guilty. And I'm thinking the context is talking about Israel. The people of Israel are those who justify the wicked. And then in Proverbs 17:5, it's saying the one who justifies the guilty and the one who condemns the righteous is an abomination to the Lord. So obviously that makes sense. So the hifil form of tzadak is very active, and it is, in the biblical picture, put side to side with rasha, as we have searched here. Notice that it brought up those usages. So proximity operators are really neat because they can help you understand contextually some different constructs that maybe you wouldn't be able to see otherwise, or they would be able to search different word combinations. There are other syntax that you can use. If I go back here, for example, you have the idea of before. So in other words, you could search. This might actually give us the exact same. Whoops. Notice that I need to be careful with how I'm running that search. So if I do, oh, no wonder I'm writing in Hebrew. Switch your keyboard to make sure it's in English. That's important. So if I do before 2 words, it gives me the same thing because this word is before, within 2 words before of this. If I use the within modifier, it's saying before or after. Now if I search for after 2 words, nothing shows up because tzadak does not come after rasha within 2 words. So you can use before, you after, or I often use within just because it combines both before and after, and that gives a helpful syntax. Now if we expand it out a little bit, let's say we expand it to 10 words. Within 10 words, will that give us anything else? Okay, it gives us a couple more examples, but notice they're not really the same because they are spaced out a little too much. They are in different clauses. So it helps still combine the same words in the verses, but it's not really pertinent to our examination per se. So play around with that. It's a lot of fun to think through that and try to use some of those different searching proximity operators and whatnot. Again, you could do in this case if we ran. Oops. See, I'm a little lost here. If we ran this, we could even combine trying to run a search for a hifil verb within 10 words. And if we ran that search, gives us the exact same result because all of these are hifils. So interesting how that works out. And so none of the call verb patterns match with that to begin with. So a lot of different ways you can run searches and examine different items for that. I hope that kind of gives you a basic introduction. I'll do a couple more examples, one from the Greek in the next video, and then I'll show you some more advanced ways you can run some searches later. But I hope that gives you a good start in how to search with different words combining, and hope it's helpful.